Welcome back once again to the You Should Get a License podcast edition, your number one source for information, education, and inspiration on the most underrated career opportunity in business today. That is a career in the insurance industry and financial services. This is Rod Powell, and today is going to be dope. It's going to be a dope day.
Yeah.
Because we have on the line one of the premier and most not only versatile, but one of the most astute professionals, in employee benefits. Someone who, I look at and say, hey, look, that's somebody who I want to be like one day, who is really, just holding the flag high, not only for the industry, but also for the community and for our people. And I want to bring him on, the president of Great Lakes Benefits, Mr. Kareim. Cade. Kareim, how you doing, brother?
Man, I am fantastic. Now I'm looking for your address right in here because I got my checkbook. So all that good stuff you just said, man, I'm gonna put a check in the mail for you, man. You know what I mean?
Word.
My mama would be proud. Mama, look at me now. Look at that. Yes. It's a pleasure to be here, brother. It is a pleasure, indeed, a pleasure to be here. Excited to share with your viewership today. I think we're gonna have a great conversation, right?
Oftentimes, when I'm speaking to somebody, I might be talking to them for the first time, on the platform. But we got history, we got a real friendship, we have a real connection. So this is going to be a fun conversation. I'm excited about it. Before we hop in, on this platform, we look to inspire people to join our industry. We look to motivate people who maybe are new to the business to stay in the business. And we look to share insights to those who have been in the business into maybe some new thought processes or even ideas that they haven't had, because there's so many different market segments. There's so many different lanes. And I remember when we met and we found out that we were actually both in employee benefits, it was like, oh, snap, because you don't see many, who are in that space. And I mentioned employee benefits in the introduction, but if you could actually just share, with our listeners and the audience, what you do on a day-to-day basis, what Great Lakes Benefits is, and how you do business in this insurance marketplace.
And I was going to say, and two bald head brothers. I mean, I'm hiding
my head brothers.
So, I mean, right. Two bald head, light skinned brothers. Here we go, man. We ready to go. We always, I have people that always tease me and say, anytime we look at any revolution that was taken on, it was some light skinned brother taking it on and pushing the agenda in this deal. And he didn't even have a reason to have to do that deal. So you and I today had to go after it. So, man, again, I thank you for the opportunity to be able to share, man, and really kind of look at our story. And what we do on a day-to-day basis. I think in order to go forward, I need to take you back to just kind of share how we got here and what it looks like, because you and I talked a lot about voluntary benefits. That's where I started in this space, was in voluntary benefits. So we didn't just jump into employee benefits. We kind of morphed into that over years. And so my first maybe 10 years, maybe 8 years in the business was strictly focused on voluntary benefits. And I did that very well. Was with Colonial Life at that time. And had a great run there. And I think that what changed for me and how Great Lakes Benefit Group was born was that at some point I began to call on brokers. And at that time, when I was involved heavily with the voluntary benefits segments, voluntary benefit specialists were the scum of the earth, bro. We were bottom feeders, man. People looked at us and said these big brokers were like, they thumb their nose at that business. And I would always say, you know what? It's not pretty, it's profitable. I mean, it was just a great business model. And so I would call on these brokers, and really start realizing that I got into a lot of the businesses that we had benefits in without ever having gone to talk to a broker. And so I went in direct, and I went in with my story, and we were talking about benefits communication. And why is all that important to how we got there? Well, I got tired of calling on brokers. And one day I just simply said, forget calling on the brokers. I'm going to be a broker. Like I knew enough about the brokers. I knew enough about the brokerage space. And I had a client that came to me and said, Kareim, this is all great. You're going to do these voluntary benefits, but here's what we're going to do. You are going to figure out how to run all of our benefit portfolio. And we're going to sign these letters, which I had never heard of an agent or record letter. I didn't know anything about that. Anything I had was brand new, fresh, a new master application. That was the deal. He said, but what's going to happen is that you're going to have to figure this out and figure out how to manage our benefits. This was in 1999. So I'm dating myself. This is how far it goes back, right? And so I looked at that deal and I'm kind of like, man, all right, I'm gonna figure this out. And I found a mentor that really kind of shared with me what the healthcare space would look like. And I quickly realized that there was nobody who looked like me. I had not come across them. I didn't see them. I didn't see any African-American brokers in this spot. And what one of my mentors said to me was like, it's great that you've gone after all the individual business. And this is not a knock on anybody who's in that space. But he said, what if you understood that every month an employer is going to pay his or her healthcare expenses for their employees because they don't want their employees to show up and not have that. So where there may be one person who things got tight that month and they didn't decide to pay their insurance premium and you got a lapse notice or you got something else that came, you got a charge back, you got anything along those lines. Here's the business that I can tell you that these employers are not going to miss. Now they might miss one, they won't miss two because they're never going to be in a position to which their employees cannot go in and flash that card and it works. And that burnt, man, that I caught that ride and I was like, oh, okay, this is a volume play now. I was fishing with a pole. Now I'm fishing with a net. And now I'm only dealing with one person as opposed to the kitchen table business that I had been doing or the worksite marketing business that I've been doing. And I had to do volume in a different way, one by one. I can now grab 50 people at one time, know that they were going to pay the bill and be done. And so when you talk about what we do, we are a full-fledged healthcare consultancy. And so we have two sides to our business. One is fee-based, where we're doing strictly consulting work. And when we say consulting work, we're doing consulting work with self-funded individuals. We're dealing with folks that are looking at being very creative in the space. And so I have two sets of clients. I have clients that are very forward-thinking, and they're looking at not this year's renewal, but the next 5-year renewals. And we're helping them to plan for that. And so we like to think that we're part of their strategic planning team. As much as they're planning strategically on everything else on how to grow their business, if they're not planning with us in mind, based upon how many people they're going to add, based upon how many different locations they're going to go into, you've got to be considering healthcare at that same time. And so we figured out that niche and begin to fill that niche in that space of just helping them to plan strategically on what that looks like. And typically with the folks that we find in that space are going to be your larger houses. You're going to get your YSGAL, you're going to get your Aon, you're going to get your Gallagher, you're going to get all these larger houses that most people depend upon to do that. And so we found that to be very boutique for us. And then the other side of that was actual products, right? We could come and actually design what a product portfolio would look like. And so when I think about day-to-day for us is less of the transactional. So we didn't want to be in a transactional space. And I know a lot of people that in our business is spreadsheet driven. You know, they come in with the same thing. They're going to shop between 7 carriers. And we realized early on that did not contain cost. And so for us to actually contain cost, we had to get up under the hood and we really had to start picking apart the insurance carriers to say, oh, this is where you make your money at. And if we were able to get people to be educated on how they could control more of those dollars themselves, they could become the insurance carrier and not have to go to one, right? And so that's really our modeling. We try to take something that's very complex and make it simple because most people won't do it. Even the larger houses won't do it. And when you look at it, this is a message, right? This is an alert here. Most of the time they won't do it because they're confined to where they get their bonuses from. And we never want to be in a space to say that we're going to place all our business with Blue Cross because they're going to give us a 7-figure check. Now, somebody may say that that's crazy as hell that you wouldn't take that, Kareim. And I'm saying, okay, I get that. Sure, we could grow faster. However, what we understand is that we made our clients a promise. And our clients' promise was the promise we made to them is that we were going to do everything in our power to help contain costs while not losing any of the things that they have. But we really were going to be in a space of mitigating risk. And in doing that, I can't be locked into one carrier to do that because I know at that point, I'm simply placing that business in that space because of what the bonuses are going to look like on the back end. And so we challenge people in that space. We challenge people to think outside of that because we've been conditioned as employees, as employers, that if we've got one of the carriers or another, that we're in good shape. And so our goal is to demystify what it looks like in the employee benefits space and help people get a handle on the second largest spend they have beside their salaries, bro. And it's just interesting to me that as we talk about it, that the people spend more time on planning for pencils and toilet paper and all the stuff that don't even come close to moving the needle that we manage. And we're getting them to understand that when you get a handle on your healthcare, it is the bank account that will allow you to do other things in your business if you can control this spend here.
Man, look, that was all right. That's the end of the interview. Thank you very much. No, look. No, that knowledge that you just shared, one, you're gonna get some people in trouble. Just FYI.
Oh, for sure. Oh, absolutely. That's my goal.
Right. So, somebody's gonna have questions after hearing that.
Yes, always.
Are you telling me? Yeah.
Yes, I am.
Right. Let's kind of go back and dissect that a little bit. Just in employee benefits in general. So let's break down what is the difference between, and you talked a little bit about the volume portion of it, but
yes,
what are some of the differences between just employee benefits versus just consumer individual market insurance?
Well, so I think you're planning for an entire demographic. And so it's different than the individual. With the individual coverage, we can laser in on what is important to Rod. Well, Rod is a father, he's a husband, he's got 2 kids, he's got a dog, so I can plan that specific to you. When I take a group of individuals and I bring them in, and let's suppose it's a group of 50, I've got all kind of demographics. So I've got Rod that has a family. I've got Kareim, whose kid is 21 in college, and yeah, I might be carrying her, but I'm not married. So I've got a different set of circumstances, right? Then we've got another person that is 23 years old, fresh out of college. And so his or her needs are different. And so when we come together to plan for an entire organization, there's different things that go into that because we've got different demographics. And so we're trying to solve for how do we meet the needs of everybody here to the best of our ability. And that's different than being in an individual space because I can talk to Rod and figure out specifically what's important to Rod, what's important to his family. I can ask those questions. Now I'm talking to an employer and say, tell me about the makeup of your organization. What does that look like? How many males? How many females? What age difference? What ethnicities should we be considering? I got a lot of other things to consider before making that plan. And it's not just coming in and slapping down a plan, which is typically what happens in my industry. I'm going to tell you that in this space that I'm in, I'm going to go on a limb and say 90% of people are spreadsheets. That's what they do. They're going to get a spreadsheet. You're going to give them a census. That census is going to have the employee demographic information. They're going to send it over to a carrier. They'll spit out some things and they're going to come back and sit in front of you with 5 pieces and say, which one do you want? I mean, that's benefit planning for them. And so we saw that and realized that, wait a minute, when we really think about this and we think about healthcare, we need to really be looking at healthcare in terms of unit costs, because in every other thing that we buy, we look at unit costs. Hell, if we go to Costco and we look at the bunch, they're going to give us a unit cost on the bunch versus us going out and buying an individual. Everything else we do is unit costs. And so healthcare is the one space, kind of this last frontier, where everything is hidden and nothing is available, right? We're trying to make it available. We're trying to get you to see some things differently, but it just doesn't happen. And so we started talking to folks about healthcare supply. So that supply chain is a whole different messaging than simply coming down in a spreadsheet, talking to an individual. So when we start talking about employee benefits as a whole, well, does it make sense for us to have a low deductible? Do we realize that 82% of the people in America never hit a deductible, but because we've been sold on having first dollar coverage, that's the first thing that we talk about. And so people are going to sell that. And it's just like in car insurance. Hell, if the deductible is lower, then guess what's higher? The premium. The premium is higher. And so we've got to do a lot of education in that space to help folks understand that there's a different way to go about doing it. And if we look at going about it doing differently, and it's not transaction based only, I can tell you most organizations see their broker at the time of open renewal. I mean, that's open enrollment is going to start. Renewal period is around. Hey, Rod, how you doing, man? Let me come over here and show you what's happening. Oh, you got a 20% increase. Oh, let me call the carrier back. Oh, now we got it down to a 17% increase. Oh, if we changed a couple things here, now we got it down to a 14% increase. You good with that? I'm good with that. Does that meet the budget? Yeah, that meets the budget. Okay, great. That's the extent of open enrollment. That is the extent of renewal. And brother, I've seen that way too many times. And the problem with that modeling is that if I got 14% this year and I get another 12 or 14% next year, and I get another one the following year, compounded, it's something that you cannot ever satisfy. You would not be able to keep healthcare. So when we hear business owners, when we hear corporations complain about healthcare continues to rise, well, it does, but there's a way to contain it. The difference is that because we've never asked the questions, even when I talk on the individual side, for a side note, even when I talk to folks about, well, did you ask your doctor that? No, because we've been trained that our doctor is the end all be all, and we shouldn't ask him or her any questions. And I'm like, that's crazy. I ask my doctor plenty of questions. I'm not going to sit in your office for an hour to only get a 5-minute meeting. That doesn't make sense to me, right? You're going to give me more than that, right?
That's right.
And so it's the same thing with an employer. I'm not going to talk to you about strategic planning and come in for 5 or 10 minutes and spreadsheet out and say, here's the deal, because it's picking the best of the worst, right? At that point, if I got a 14% increase or a 20% increase here, I'm looking at which carrier gave me a 3%. Okay, well, let's switch. And so now we got employees switching from carrier to carrier to carrier to carrier. And at some point, you come to the end of the road that there are no more carriers to shop with. And now you just start taking that increase year over year. And so we're trying to demystify that, man, and to say to folks that, you know what, proper planning and looking at this thing from a unit cost and finding out in your contracts, what are you paying for? Are you in the best network? It requires some work, and most people aren't willing to do the work, including the large brokerage firms, which is why they keep most people fully insured, brother. And so those differentials to me make up the difference of employee benefit planning and what we're looking at versus just coming in and spreadsheeting and saying, hey, here's what it is, pick from this, great deal, I'll see you next year, or I'll see you on the golf course. And that's how business is still being done now. It's very archaic.
That's it. That's a great summary. Like when I think of employee benefits, I think of Voltron.
Holding the pieces together. Everybody comes
all
together.
The pieces. Like one lion doesn't make it.
No.
One lion doesn't make it.
No. Not
you
at all.
gotta have each component, and each component has to fit and serve its purpose properly.
Yes.
Because you can't shortcut any of those components either.
No, you can't shortcut. And I bring this up because we're talking about why get into the insurance business. The one thing that I would share that I'd be remiss if I didn't say, Rod, is that the thing where I see specifically African Americans and other marginalized communities come into our space and where they go wrong is that you started this segment by saying that there's so many different things that we can do. And so when you get that insurance license, it gives you the power to sell 3,000 different, I always call them on-ramps, right? You got 3,000 different on-ramps, man. And once you're in the space, every day you're getting an email marketing to you from a different on-ramp. And so what ends up happening with us is unlike the Voltron method that we just talked about, where maybe there's 4 or 5 things. And I always talk about it with my guys in terms of being a wheel with spokes, right? The center of our spoke is what we do. That center core is what we do. But every offshoot that we look at, we had to get the center core right first to then begin to deal with all the other offshoots. And what I watch people do when they come into our business, and why a lot of them don't stay in the business, is that they join what I call the idea of the month club, where simply some new idea came in. Now they're selling long-term care. Oh, now I'm going to sell Medicare. Or now I'm going to do IUL. Or now I'm going to do annuities. Or now I'm going to do car insurance. And they never get a space. And so what happens with most of the folks that are in our industries that look like you and I is that they're the jack of all trades, master of none. And what I always prefer to compare it to is that when we think about a physician, when I think about an internal medicine doctor, he or she is the jack of all trades. When I think about a heart surgeon, he or she is a specialist. And when we look at from a revenue standpoint, who generates the most revenue? Well, it's always the specialist. The specialist is the person that I call on. You're the subject matter expert. Yeah, do I know a lot about everything? But if I can be in the center, I can be the center lion or whatever that is, and I got other people that I can call on to do those other things. I don't need to get caught up in what is going on in IULs. I don't need to get caught up in what's going on in car insurance at home. That's not my lane, but I can hook up with another lion like Rod, and now I can make that my lane without doing it. And so I just encourage folks to find something that they do and make it the goose that lays the golden egg. And so once I had something in that space that created recurring revenue and I could begin to look at everything, then I can start saying, oh, well, maybe it does make sense to dovetail this onto what we're already doing. And how do I continue to solidify my business and keep other people out of it? Well, I partner with other folks. So I'm not in 401k, but I've got some folks with 401k. I'm not in payroll. because these are all very important components of what we do from employee benefit planning. Right. And so sticking to something that makes sense for you, specifically if you're fresh into the business, and even if you've been in the business a long time. I know people been in this business floundering around for 20 years, man. Yeah. But I've got 12 different business cards for them from all these different things that they've tried, and none of it is going to work instantaneously. You got to work it. Are they making money in all of them? Yeah. People making money in all of them, bro. In every insurance company, even insurance companies you and I not familiar with. Hell, there's 1,800 different insurance companies out there. Man, they all ain't in business doing nothing. They selling something, bro. Somebody's selling something that they got, and there's a top of the table person in that deal. So I just would encourage folks to make sure that you find something specific. And so we are specifically in the space that we're talking about, and we don't deviate from that.
That's a jewel, man. I love that guidance and that advice. You know, let's take a minute and kind of go back. Let's go back pre-insurance.
Yeah.
Now I know that, you know, your father was also in the industry as well.
My mother.
Your mother was in the industry. Okay.
My mother was in the industry. Yes.
Mother was in the industry. Your father was an educator. Father educator, mother is in the business.
Yes.
Let's go back. 9 years old, 10 years old, Kareim Cade.
Yes.
What did you dream about being when you grew up?
Man, an entrepreneur. I didn't know what that meant. I didn't know what that was. And I'm gonna tell you how I got there, right? I went to a Catholic school here in Detroit, old school, shout out to St. Mary's of Redford, no longer around, but I went to Catholic school back there, and they would have these magazine sales every year. That was part of the deal. They had a magazine sale. That was part of their fundraiser for the school. And so probably about, I want to say probably the fourth, fifth grade, you know, I went home and I told my parents, hey, I've got this magazine drive. And they were like, okay, well, that's your magazine drive. Like you need to get it. And typically what we do as parents is we go out and sell all the stuff for our kids, right? We go do the work and sell the stuff for our kids. You know, my kids selling something, you put the candy bars on your desk, the cookie sheet, all that, but you don't give them the opportunity to go out and sell for themselves. And so my parents pushed me and was like, okay, you want to do this deal. And I think at that time, because we wore a uniform, if you sold so many magazines, you got a coupon for a jean day, right? You got a coupon for a hot dog day. So that was big stuff. If you had jeans on, bro, and you had a hot dog, man, you were the guy. Like you were that person. And so I got into that deal and started selling, man, and did very well doing that magazine deal. So early on, I kind of realized like, oh, there may be something into this deal. And I never colored inside the lines, right? And so my dad is the guy that colored inside the lines. I mean, he's gonna follow all the rules. And I wasn't a bad kid or a mischievous kid or anything along those lines. I just was always thinking outside the box. So 9, 10, I'm thinking about what I'm doing. One of my guys that I work with right now, Rob and I have been together since 4th grade, and he would tell you that we would sit on the curb and I'd be like, you know, man, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm gonna get in sales. I'm gonna create a business. I'm gonna do something. But that's when we were young, because I didn't want to work for anybody. So my next piece was at 16, I had my own lawn service. And so I cut grass in the neighborhood. And I got some bright idea at 17, going into my junior year of high school, I think it was, that I wanted to get a real job. And so I gave up this tax-free income with this lawn service to go work in a grocery store. And they started talking about taxes. I'm like, who is Fuda and Suda? And who are all these people getting a piece of money? They ain't coming here to work. And my mother, by this time, has shifted and gone into the insurance industry. And so I'm kind of looking at this deal like, wow. And they're looking at me like, well, yeah, you had, I think at that time I was making $150 a week, cutting 8, 9, paying $10 a lawn. You know what I mean? And I cut the little island in the middle of the street. But the point being is that I had tax-free money that I did every day, but I wanted to have a real job. And so I gave that up. And that was one of my first things at 16, 17 years old, where I was like, oh man, I got to punch a clock. I had somebody telling me what I do. I cut these lawns when I wanted to. I made my own schedule of cutting these lawns. I did all this. I had a little overhead. I had gas outside of gas. Man, I had a whole situation and I gave that up. So back then got me to thinking like that. As I told you through some of the questions that were asked too, dad is academic. Everybody's, you know, PhDs and otherwise. And that's fantastic. Book smart. Wasn't that I wasn't a smart kid. I just wasn't engaged at that same level. And so I could do it. I'd go get a 3.8 one semester, and the next semester I go get a 2.7 because I just wasn't engaged, man. I wasn't involved at all. And so then I got mom's side of the family, and that's the hustle street guys, the street entrepreneurs, as I call them.
Right.
The street entrepreneurs. And I'm looking at that, and I had an affinity to that. I liked the way they moved. I liked everything. And my mother was like, but I've determined that that's not going to be your life. You're not going to follow in that. But I was able to see that and glean from that and take the best of both worlds. And as they say, chocolate and peanut butter makes a pretty damn good candy bar, is what happened with me to be able to take that deal on. And so mom got into the business. I watched her leave a quote unquote good business, a good job, I should say. and got into the insurance business. And she was doing kitchen table business, man. She was going to see folks late at night. And so I'd be home or over one of my buddy's house, and I'd eat a lot of dinners at my buddy's house because mom was out doing 7 o'clock, 9 o'clock appointments, come over, pick me up, bring me back to the house. But I watched her grind that deal out, man. Yeah. And I saw that she no longer wanted to work for anybody, that she was in that space. And that spoke to me, bro.
Wow. Wow. That's strong. That's strong. So at what point, so let's say you're 17, you decide you're going to go work in a grocery store. You're watching your mom, you know, she's on the hustle. She's making it happen. Obviously that's motivating you. That's fueling the fire within you. Now you start at some point you went to school. Was that the driver for you to major in risk management? Like how did that come about?
So I got a great story. So man, so I'm looking at mom, and one thing I should say, there's a couple pieces I need to add in here. Just there's gonna be people that listen to this, and I'm like, man, you got to understand this is this. So my mother thought differently. So if I didn't perform well in school, where some of my buddies had punishments, and I had punishment. I mean, but her punishment for me, man, and she would tell you she's sitting here right now, man. Her punishment for me was that I had to listen to Anthony Robbins and Les Brown, bro. That's what I had to do, bro, was my punishment. What? Are you hearing me, bro? So you figuring I'm getting Les
Shout
Brown.
Shout out to moms, yo. Shout out to moms.
And man, shout out to my mama, Pat Reed. Hey, she'll probably see this, and I'll send this to her so she can see it. But that was my punishment, man. And so at that time, I had cassette tapes. We had the whole series on Anthony Robbins, his first series. We had Les Brown. And brother, I would have to sit there, and that was my punishment. I had to listen to that stuff. So I'm getting this stuff poured into me early on. I'm helping my mother to build folders for her presentations and that kind of stuff. So I'm kind of seeing what it takes, but I'm also being fed, hey, how I should think about myself, what I should be thinking about, how I should go. And so I decided I want to go to Clark Atlanta. Shout out to the Clark Atlanta University. Thus my red, black, gray, and all this stuff back here is between my Chiefs and Clark, man. I keep it Clark around here. And so with Clark, man, how did I pick Clark? Everybody's like, well, how did you pick Clark West? So I would go on these historical black college, these tours every summer. I had a guy here, Tal James, since passed on, but Tal would have us to go on these trips, and I go. But what the killer for me was I saw School Days, man, and I was like, damn, I want to do that. I want to go on the yard. I want to hang out. And at that time, you got to remember, Freaknik had just started in Atlanta. So I'm hearing about Freaknik. So I had no intentions of going to insurance. I had intentions of going to school and party. And guess what, Rod? I did it well. I did it very well. So well that in my 3rd year, my mother called me on the phone. And remember, there are no cell phones. There's nothing. I'm dating myself. Ain't no cell phone, brother. She catches me at my apartment on the house phone. And she's like, oh, glad I called you. She leaves me, as a matter of fact, she left me a message on my answer machine, right? She leaves me a message. Call mom back. Hey, what's up? You having a great time? Having a great time. Well, great. Well, I just want to let you know, as we told you before you went down there, we were only paying for 4 years. It's your 3rd year. I think you've had a phenomenal time because your grades show that you've done nothing but have a phenomenal time. We're only paying for 4 years. So I suggest you figure out what you're going to do to get out, or you're going to be paying for the future years after that. I know my mama, know my daddy. That was the gospel, bro. There was nothing in between. That call came to let me know, hey, that's fine. I hope you're having a great time, but you better realize that that's coming to an end. And so I went to my advisor. I had taken a couple of insurance. I wasn't even on track, man, for any particular thing. I didn't know what I was going to do coming out of school. But I had taken some insurance courses at Clark. I had taken a real estate course at Clark. And so I went to see this advisor. And advisor had never seen my advisor prior to this either. Now, I mean, I'm making a case for everybody can make this thing happen. Everybody can make this happen, man. Go see the advisor. And I'm like, hey, don't really know what I need to do. I need to get up out of here. And I had taken enough courses through this insurance and risk management piece and what have you, where they were like, well, you could finish out with this deal and you could finish right on time. You can finish in 4 years, and here are the courses you need to take. We'll arrange this deal for you, so on and so forth. And so that was my reason for going into insurance and risk management. Nothing else. My mama did it. I thought she was successful in it. I didn't know what I was going to do. My degree was going to always, from my standpoint, my degree was going to be my mother's. I knew I was going to go out and do something else, but I had no direction. I had no thought of how that was going to happen. I had nothing. I just had pipe dreams, bro, that I'm going to be rich. The same way most people sit around on the corner and say, I'm going to be rich with no plan. I had no plan, but I figured, I watched my mom come up in it. I'm like, I think I might be able to do this insurance thing. And so I finished in 94, 4 years in, finished in 94, 95, moved back. I was still in Atlanta, moved back to Detroit, got my license in 95. And then all hell broke loose. I failed miserably, brother. I got in 95. My mother fired me in 96, told me that I was lazy and I was trifling. And she was right about all those things. And here's the thing I always point out when I tell this story. I am born on my mother's birthday. My mother just turned 75. I just turned 50, July 22nd, brother. So I'm tight with my mama. She'll tell you, he ain't no mama's boy, because he would do a lot of things like I asked him to do. He ain't no mama's boy, but I'm tight with my mama. And so I'm like, surely she gonna turn me on to clients. Sure, she gonna turn me on. She was like, oh no, I've built this over these years. If you're not gonna sit down and do what it takes, then you need to leave. And at that time, I had just gotten married. And so she said, hey, and I can tell you, your wife is not gonna put up with you not making any money. And she was absolutely right. My wife at the time was not happy with me not making any money. And so I went and taught school for 2.5 years, man. I went and taught special education 3rd and 4th grade, which by far was the best learning lesson that I had, because what I realized on the front end, Rod, is that I was extremely good with this right here. I was horrible with these. I was proficient with this. I was inefficient with these, bro. And going into a special ed classroom where I had learning disabled, I had folks that needed a little bit more time, I had to stop and pause and be able to really get involved, because even though I was not qualified to be a special education teacher, they put me in that role, and I felt like I owed it to those kids to make sure that I did something with them. And I just didn't come in and hand out a worksheet and say, hey, that's it, and go to your next class. It was a self-contained class. That 2.5 years changed my life, bro.
Wow. So in essence, you really ended up getting a bit of both of your parents.
Yes, I did. You know? Yes, I did.
Yeah.
That's exactly it. I got the best of both worlds, because my dad had been there, and no different than what it is today. At that time, they were looking for African-American males to come in the classroom, which is still the case today, right? And I'm young. I'm in my early 20s. I'm 23, 24. So I'm fresh out of college, fresh out of partying, having a great time. I come in contact with these kids, man, and these kids changed my life. Like, I mean, I'm like looking at their situations and understanding how much of a good situation I had and how I squandered. The other thing I should say and point out to your listeners, man, is that coming out of Clark, I had no prospects, man. I think I graduated. My final GPA coming out of Clark was 2.3, I believe it was. So I had no prospects of anybody looking for me to get a job. I hadn't even been to the Career Placement Center for the 4 years that I was there. Had no internships. I had nothing, man. Part of my thing while I was on campus is that I was hustling. I was hustling whatever I could hustle. I was into stuff that I had no business being into, but because I liked that kind of deal and I was good at it, that's what I did. And so I come out, man, to no prospects of any job. I come out to people offering me $10, $11 an hour. I come out to just a dismal situation where I'm just like, oh my God, this is the worst thing ever. What am I going to do? And so both of those worlds come together. I got in, and during this time, I'm still involved. Since you talked about IMO, I'm involved with network marketing, man. I'm still feeding myself with everything. I'm reading every book that I can read. I get a hold of Rich Dad, Poor Dad early in those years before Robert Kiyosaki ever became the man in that space. I get a hold of that. So my mind is constantly shifting and changing. And I know I don't want to do what I'm doing in this classroom. I know I want to go back into the insurance industry. And so I'm watching these cats with Colonial, because as I shared with you, I'm with Colonial. So I'm watching these cats at Colonial. And it's a brother over in California named Bob Blake. Bob Blake had one of the most incredible agencies that I had ever seen, in that it was very diverse. And I hope that we'll talk about diversity, what that looks like in our space. But it was a very diverse agency. And of course, they're in California, so they've got a melting pot. So he had Latina, he had Asian, he had African-American, he had white. He had anything you can name, he had it. And I would just watch the numbers. I would watch what he was doing. And every year, here it is, it's a brother. I get a chance to watch a brother, and he is kicking ass. And I'm like, wow. So 98, November of 98, I'm sitting in my classroom. And at this time, I had moved out of the classroom of doing what I was doing. And I just had a real bad job. It was I'm embarrassed to even say what my job was. It was a garbage job, but it was an important job, but it was garbage at the time because there were the students that were English was a second language for them. I had to record them speaking English and what they had, write down where they went wrong, and report this back to the educators doing it. So that was my job, brother. And I was just looking at myself at this point in time saying, man, what are you going to do? By this time, I'm probably 26, 25, 26. I hear next door there's somebody selling insurance next door because it's worksite marketing. They got a payroll deduction account in the school. I hear them going through that process. I go out and introduce myself to them. Happens to be a lady who works for my mom.
Oh.
I talked to her. I talked to Tammy. She's now Tammy and I are brother and sister right now. She saved my life. But I go outside. I talk to her. She tells me what she's doing. She had been a former nurse, and my mother always talked about her really kind of being her major pupil. I mean, the one who was just out there getting it done, no excuses. And I talked to her about what she was doing, and I realized that in that 20 minutes that she had been in that classroom, she made $500, and I was being paid $95 a day as a substitute teacher in a regular position. And I'm like, 20 minutes, 500. I've been here all day. I'm recording people. I'm writing stuff down. This is ridiculous. I talked to her as God is my witness, right?
Say that again. Say that again.
God is my witness, right? I quit that day.
Wow.
I quit that day.
Wow. And we need to recap though, because that's important for, listen, you said that 20 minutes.
Yes.
You realized.
Yes.
She made 500.
Yes.
You there all day long.
Yes.
$90.
$95.
$95.
All day.
All day.
All day.
Interesting.
Yeah. All day.
Yeah.
And so then what happened is that with Bob Blake's story, why that's important is that, you know, the other thing I got to say to your listener and your viewership is this, right? Is that I called Bob. I've always said it was 16 times. Maybe he'll tell you it was 10 times. I said it was 16. I called Bob and I called Bob and I called Bob and I called Bob. And Bob didn't get back to me. Bob was busy. I called Bob, and Bob knew because my mother was with Colonial. Bob knew my mom, and I don't think it was that. It was just that whatever was going on, he didn't get back. And finally, he got back to me. He's like, Kareim, you know what can I do for you? I said, I just want to come out there and see what y'all are doing and see if I can learn something. He agreed for me to come out there and to see his operation. And I went out there. I took every dime I had. And at the time, we were staying, my ex-wife and I were staying in an apartment, man. I took the rent money that month without her knowing and flew out to California. And she was pissed. She was hot about it. It was a bad deal. But I just wanted to go out there and see. And here was the magic about one. You ready for this ride? Wait for it. Wait for it. I go out there and I start looking at everything. And I realized, damn, ain't nothing magical about this. They just go to work every day. They got a plan. They go to work every day. They lay out the work. They lay out the plan. They've got camaraderie amongst the agencies, amongst the agents. They help one another. They focus on their strengths. They minimize their weakness. Every car I got in when I was going out with somebody had Zig Ziglar or Tom Hopkins or something in the car. They were taking their car and treating it like a library the whole time it was there. There was nothing that they were doing that was a silver bullet that was going to change my life and make my career grow any faster besides work, bro. I mean, that was just the deal. You know what I mean? The work. And we came back from that was November 98, came back. And I think it was 99, 2000, 2001. We were #1 agency in Colonial Life in the nation for what we did. And we ran those numbers. And I came back and I'm like, oh, it's work. Okay. I know I can outwork. I might not be the smartest guy in the room. I may not be, but I will outwork a joker any given day because I had picked up work ethic. And a lot of that came through what I was listening to with the process, what I was reading, how it was changing my image of me and what I needed to do in order to be a successful business owner. These were the things that had to happen. And so that is how we got the kickoff. That was in 98. And I've never looked back, man. So those 2.5 years that I was out of the business, my mother convinced me to keep my license. I'm watching other people in the industry, didn't have the luxury. Again, at that time, there wasn't no internet where we were sitting on the internet looking at this. I had to read business journals. I had to look and see that deal came out in the mail and I would see that deal. And I would say, oh man, this is what this person is doing. I would look in the bulletins and say, oh, this is what's going on. That was the deal. That was the communication. So I think the difference was I didn't have the access to all the resources that people have today to be able to go on and look and figure out. You don't have to go get Zig Ziglar stuff. You can go on YouTube this stuff. You can YouTube everything. I didn't have that. So my tolerance today with newer agents is that you have no excuses, right? You have no reasons not to do this. You just have to have a game plan and get focused. And that was the deal that took us through there. And if I just give you the short end of it, of how we got to Great Lakes, I do that through 2006. And in 2006, I come to the agency owners that I work with, which were fantastic. They've been supporters of mine for years. They were fantastic mentors for me from the beginning. And I kind of looked and said, well, hey, is there an opportunity for an equity play? And they were kind of like, well, no, there's not really opportunity for equity play. And I had another kind of line in the sand right there to say, okay, well, what do I want to do? I knew that I wanted to be in control of my destiny. I knew that I wanted to have the business be in my name. I knew that I wanted to go after it. I knew that I wanted to grow in a different way from just voluntary. And so they gave me the ability to kind of figure out, get my feet wet, stay with them for a number of years, have success, but then begin to shift over to now what we call Great Lakes Benefit Group, which started in 2006 and what we do now. And even that has morphed over those years.
Wow. Wow. You know what okay, two things I want to pull out. Two things I want to pull, a lot of gems. First thing, you know, in your story, you realized, and I hope that those who are listening realize that there are no shortcuts.
No shortcuts.
There were no shortcuts.
No.
Actually, shoot, I said three things. Sacrifice.
Yes.
Sacrifice. You said, man, you say you use the rent money on the low.
Rent money on the low.
To go out to get some intellectual capital.
Yes.
That you can bring back.
Yes.
Realize that, look, you just got to put in the work.
Put in the
bottom line. You also fueling that mental input continuously, you know, so that you're keeping your thoughts focused on where you, not what you're going through, but where you're going to,
Absolutely.
you know. Then, you know, coming back, even when you're working for the agency, you're realizing, one, that ownership is important, especially for us in our space, especially. No, not a question yet.
Go for it.
You also mentioned, is there an equity play? Is there equity? Listen, why don't people ask that question?
I don't know. I don't know. I don't understand. And especially when you start to realize, now the one thing you got to look at is that you start to realize kind of what your value is and what it looks like in an organization. And surely, you know, I've had people that have come to me and say, hey, well, what about this and that? And if it's not a person that I would want to be in business with, per se, to that level, hey, you got to go figure it out on your own, right? There is no equity play in this space. But what it made me do, man, is really think about, like, the equity play was everything, because I always remember listening back to that stuff back in the day and still listening to all of the information I listened to. You know, I remember J. Paul Getty saying, you know what, man, I take 1% of 100 man's efforts than 100% of my own. So I looked at that and I was like, well, if that makes sense back then, it makes sense right now. If I own the agency and I can put people involved, I realize that there's different skill sets that we all have. I've been blessed with my gifting is I can go talk to anybody at any given time. I can network with anybody at any given time. And I can flip that into other opportunities. I realized that there were people that just are great at selling, but they could never go out and talk to an employer. They could never go out and go find new business because that's not their strength. That's not their suit. And so I looked at it and said, well, if I focus strictly on my strength then become more that of a business owner, because I was never the top voluntary benefits salesperson. I was the top team because I was able to get people, motivate, inspire people to go out and partner with me. They understood that I was willing to do the same work that they were willing to do, even if they were better than me. And I was not afraid for them to be better than me, right? I was looking to hire people who were better than me, because to me, as a leader, that's what good leaders do.
That's the mark of leadership.
That's part of leadership, is finding people that are better than me. If I'm the smartest guy in the room, I'm in the wrong room, right? I need to find people that can also make me better in the space that I was looking at. And so that became my deal. And saying, being a business owner, I looked at how many agents I had for this agency. I started thinking, like, well, wow, if I had this, and what they had was that they controlled the groups because they were the ones that went out and got the business. I'm like, well, now I'm going out and getting business, bringing it to their bottom line, which is I'm okay with, because I've learned here, I've gotten in here. But now, why don't I start my own deal and go and deal that? And Rod, let me tell you this, man. When I did that, when I left from Colonial, I think at that point I might have been, you're talking about 06. So we're talking, I left 06. So that's what, from here, 16 years ago, which means I would have been 34. So when I left at 34, brother, I was probably making $150,000 a year on Easy Street. I mean, I was cruising, because I had a crew, I had a team. They had a budget.
You went into 06.
Yeah, bro. I mean, I'm talking about, man. I mean, brother, from the time I came back, when I left teaching till I came back in 3 years, I was at $100,000. From the time I left teaching, when teaching, I was probably making $32,000 a year. From that to then, I'm making $100,000 a year. And that's not bragging to your viewers. I'm just telling you, shit, I went and did the work, right? I understood. And on top
that's
of that,
important, because people, the majority of people who have never been in this industry, especially if you haven't been in it for an extended period of time, if you just maybe even if you just touched it.
Yeah.
But for the majority of people, they don't have any clue at all.
Yeah, no clue, man.
And they don't know what the income looks like. And the reality is, I'm like, yo, this is the industry where most millionaires are made.
Man, there's nothing to talk about. And I'm talking about, I went from zero, as Drake would say, 0 to 100 real quick. I went 0 to 100 real quick and looked up, and at 30, I'm sitting here saying, so when I make this decision, I got to go home and then tell my ex-wife at the time to go home and say, hey, I'm gonna leave. We got this nice cushy lifestyle. Everything is easy. But look, we driving what we want to drive. We living how we want to drive. You know what? I'm gonna give all that up because I want equity. And you can imagine what that conversation looked like. What? Why would you give this up? I mean, and even with the money at the 150, had I stayed with them, I'd been making 300, 400,000. I mean, it would not have stopped. Yeah. I just would not have owned anything. And for me, the ownership, now would I have owned my renewals? Yes, I would have owned my renewals. But the group, I was still in a position that if they decided that they didn't want me to work in their accounts any longer, then I had to go create my own. Well, if I was going to create my own, I might as well create my own. That was my thought. And so I created my own. And so I went back down in income to then be able to come back to the place to say, now you own it. To your point about equity, I can tell you in the last 2 years, I've probably had every person you can think of. I had 8 or 9 people come to try to purchase us now. So now I'm in a space where, because I own an asset, that people want to talk to me about buying me and write that check for me to be able to say I can walk out into the sunset. Should I do off the work of 20 some odd years though, man? This is 24 years of grinding like this. You know what I'm saying? And being in space. So my thought is that in us having this type of conversation, one, even with you, Rod, I expect for you to get there much faster than I did, because you ain't got to go through, and you can talk with folks that have already done it, Quincy's of the world, the other folks that have already done it, bro, where it should be able to do it faster. And it's the same thing we want to share with the viewership. Mentorship is everything, right? I had great mentors. And now we're looking at saying, how do we become great mentors to help people get it from where they are from 0 to 100 a lot faster. And so having that equity, having the piece that I control now, it's fun to wake up and say, okay, you know what? This is my deal. I own it, I control it, whatever we're going to do. My staff are fantastic. And even though I'm a sole proprietor on the agency, I still don't make decisions without my core team involved, man. I mean, because those decisions I maintain veto power, obviously, but I never get to use it, man, because I'm open. I got smart people around me, man. And so I'm open to hearing what they have, because they'll keep us out of a lot of places where it's just not my strength, though. And my strength is going to get the deal, man. That's what we do. So that's the difference. So just being encouraging to those folks that are out there listening.
Hey, thank you, man. And let's spend a few minutes as we go to the last half of the interview, okay, to talk about ownership and being a Black man and employee benefits. Let's talk about that for a minute. Woo! Because first off, once again, when I met you and you're a broker and you Black, obviously.
Hey, and bald head,
and bald headed, and plant based, and
plant based. Yes. I'm
like, huh? Where they make you at?
Where they make you at? Where you come from?
I mean, and not to say, look, you mentioned mentorship too, but and not to say, I've had white mentors, in this business. I mean, obviously, because the majority of who
all mine have been. I mean, with the exception of the agency that I work with, that I shared with you about, they've been.
And they've been helpful, right? But as we mentioned earlier, it's important, for young brothers to see, you and I, having these kinds of discussions. What does that mean for you? I mean, at the level that you're at now, right? Because you're not just starting. You're not, you're not just kind of working in a one man shop. You built an agency. You're doing big deals. You're doing large groups.
Right.
What does that mean for you and your positioning? And how do you see that being more of an impact, in the future of this industry as a whole?
Well, I think it's always the adage of, if you see it, you can believe it. Unfortunately, I mean, that's just what it is. We don't see us in this space. And so even me taking an interview, I'll take you back, right? And again, looking at where we started, I never wore facial hair. I mean, I never wore facial hair because my mentors told me, hey, if you're going to do this deal, you got to wear facial hair. That's not part of the deal. I always had on a suit. I've been in suits for 20 some odd years. And so for me to do an interview like this now, to be in a white tee and a hat, freedom over everything, and just kind of doing my thing, I want to be able to say to those folks out there to say, you know what? Yeah, I don't have to be in a three-piece suit because I'm not trying to impress anybody in that space. And so all of the impression game is over. I've done that. I paid the price to have to do that, to get into the rooms, to even to some degree, Rod, I'm gonna be straight with you, to assimilate with how things had to do in that respective space, because I wanted to play here. And when I was playing here, I could get in and do those things, but here required something else. It required me to have to do so. Somebody could say, well, you might have been shucking and jiving. Well, I always was me, but I had to get into space to get the information because they didn't see anybody that looked like me. So if you can imagine, here it is, my team is all African-American. I walk into the door, and specifically, I normally roll with 2 other brothers with me. And so it's 3 brothers walking in. And so just imagine 3 brothers in suits, we walking in, and they're looking forward to saying, well, who talking to us about his benefits? Oh, it's Great Lakes Benefit Group. And so one of the things I had to even look at with the name, originally my name was Onyx Benefit Resources, right? And I kept Onyx Benefit Resources. And then I was like, you know what? I need to have something that's a little neutral, that nobody knows who I am when I come to the table. If I bid on something, it's basic. And so we flipped to Great Lakes Benefit Group. That was something that I always thought about from the beginning, something that would be neutral, something that if I decided to sell, somebody could assume that name. I mean, I didn't have the insight or foresight at this point to think about it from a nationwide perspective, because Great Lakes Benefit Group kind of limits me into what people think that we're able to do, that we're just in the Great Lakes. That's the news for a different story, right? But, you know, but in my thinking, I was thinking about how people would think about us. And so in looking at that, it was always, you know, shirt and tie. You never caught me without, because I had to go out and groove and I had to kind of do those things. So now in this space, and you're asking the question of what the impact is now, I think that people now, because we've got younger folks that are getting into the CFO role, CEO role, they've got sleeve tattoos, they got gauges in their ears, they've got something else that now is about me, is about being my authentic me. I'm my authentic me at all times. I'm my authentic me when I'm working with my clients. Now, do I code switch? I'm not gonna let anybody out here think that I don't code switch. Absolutely. If I walk into a meeting and I walk into and the whole room is looking like I'm typically gonna say, what up, though? That's the Detroit slang word for hello. What up, though? So I'm gonna say what up, though, when I'm in the D, whatever the deal is, and my clients that can groove with that and groove that. But if I'm going to a majority operation, well, no, I'm gonna call, hey, Bob, hey, Jim, hey, how's it going? What's the deal? But then at some point, they're gonna get the real me. They're gonna understand. But I know how to mix all those things in. And so when we started ascending and getting to some of those larger deals, it really got down to the point at the larger deals that the employers wanted to know, could we bring the fire the same way that they thought they were getting from these larger houses? And when they realized that we were telling them stuff that they hadn't even come to, what I realized about all folks, Rod, is that when it comes to their money, bro, that's a game changer, right? And so even though they at the golf club with so-and-so, and that's the deal, if I come in and I can show them how not only they're going to save money, but we're going to plan differently for this thing, and it's going to be very strategic in how we go about it, they're looking and saying, shit, I ain't never heard this. All I've always seen is just been a spreadsheet in front of me. That's the only thing that we've done. So now I've been able to change that whole deal and change the perception of that. And I think that now when we think about it from our larger deals, we feel like we deserve to be there, right? And because part of this business, in any business, is just simply about building your confidence to know that you can be there. And what I realized is that when I called on 20-person groups, man, and I called on 100 or 500 or 1,000-person group, the work was the same. Matter of fact, I do more work with the 20-person group because they don't have an HR department. So they calling me for everything. They calling me, and I'm not knocking that. And I love all my clients that fit in that deal. If anybody's listening out there, I love y'all, right? But it's just more intensive in that space versus going to larger groups. And I'm like, well, why wouldn't I continue to go up? And the only reason that I wouldn't ask for a 1,000-person group is that I didn't feel like I was qualified to go after it. And that was an inside job. It had nothing to do with anybody externally. Although externally they were not accustomed to seeing us, we had to constantly make it known, okay, well, I know you haven't seen us. Let's speak that from the obvious. Let's speak that out right up front. No, you're probably not used to seeing this. You're probably used to seeing us coming out and looking like a sports team coming out. We're going to make some jokes about it because I want people to be uncomfortable, comfortable though. I mean, make you a little uncomfortable to bring you back in, such that you lose the focus. Because right now, when I sit down, that's all you're focused in on is that who are these black dudes coming in here, and how how did they get to the table, and who they know, and all that stuff. So let's get that off the table, and now let's try to level that playing field where you and I are talking the same way that you're talking to any of the box houses out there, that you're dealing with us the same way, and you're looking at us now for the value that we bring, and not looking at us as, oh, it's coming from this source. And so as I look to attract other people to this industry, I'm passionate about that now, and coming to Atlanta changed my life again, man. So I'm always looking for those moments that change your life and those aha moments, because I was literally 2 weeks prior to that had looked at a company that talked about that they wanted to buy us, right? And I'm looking at it again. You start thinking about it in our community. What do we talk about all the time, Rob? We talk about getting the bag, bro. I mean, that's the terminology. We even got white folks talking about getting the bag, brother. Everybody talking about getting the bag. And so now I'm looking and saying, well, I'm in a position to quote unquote get the bag, whatever that bag is. If it's 3 million, 5 million, whatever, it's going to be a larger lump sum than I've ever had, right? And so that becomes to get something that you start thinking about, man, what would I do? It's like the conversation when you win the lottery. What would I do if I had that money? So you start thinking about, and now it's real for me though, because I can actually sell and get this. And I go down here and meet this sister and goes and see you, man, and see these other folks. And she challenges me and says, well, wait a minute. You're going to sell? We don't have enough African-American agencies out there. And now you're going to sell back to a majority agency? Nobody had ever said it to me in that terminology to make me think about it from that standpoint. She was like, hey, if we develop more people, hell, you don't have to sell. You can be the chairman of the board and hire a CEO to come in and run your organization. But that's just different thinking, man. And you've got to be around other people that can challenge you on that thought process, because in that 2 to 3 million or whatever my number would have been that I get as a lump sum, I'm going to make that in cash flows regardless, because we keep getting business. We keep getting more business. So we're going to do that. And that's not to entice anybody to come in terms of, again, folks, 24 years, I'm telling you. So if I ain't making some money in 24 years, I should be in this business. You shouldn't even be interviewing me if I ain't making money after 24 years of doing this here, right? And so I had to think about those things and look at that impact. And I wasn't done, though, Rod. That's the other thing, is I wasn't done, because I feel like everything that I have done up until this point has led us to these last 3 or 5 years, where now we're getting looks from other people. And then the unfortunate thing with George Floyd comes into play, and that happens. And then I get more people now, because I've been in the space, been traveling the country for years. People know who we are, know who our agency is. Now I start getting people to give us additional opportunities that we didn't have before, because they understand the value. They understand the work that we've already done. We've got a track record in place. And now it's just not about making your DEI spend. It's about bringing me on or bringing our team on, because we're the most qualified to do the work. And man, that is just a huge, to talk about it being a blessing, man, just to see people respect you for what you do. Now, I still got to chin check a lot of folks, man. I ain't going to lie, bro. In the industry with carriers and that kind of deal, I still have to stand 10 toes down, as they say in the hood, right? I still have to do that. Yeah. But I've got the respect in the industry now after years of doing it. And the track record speaks for itself. And so that impact to me, brother, is everything. And that's why I'm trying to get as many people, I'm trying to put as many marbles in the jar of people who will come in and take a look at this industry, because I know what it can do if they're willing to put in the work. Absolutely, bro. And I appreciate that. I appreciate you. I see that, you know what I mean? I see you as the chairman. Yeah. You know? Yeah. Look, speaking about getting to that point, right? Going to the place where building into the place where, hey, if you wanted to, explore, acquisition, you could do that. Right. But really understanding like what you represent, to the industry and to the space. And a shout out to Ngozi as well. Like just absolutely, and she gets much love, much love, man. Everything, much love. And the baddest black broker, shout out as well. The name, all day long. Yes. Carlton, Quincy, Adam and the boys. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. At Carlton. Yes, sir. What's the goal for you now? What's the goal for Kareim Cade now? What's the long-term vision? It's legacy building now, bro. For me, everything is about legacy building. I want to continue to grow. Obviously, the agency, we just expanded down into the Florida market. We're in a couple. I think we're in 9 states now, doing business, some form of business in 9 states. But physically, having a presence down in the Florida market as well. So I want to see that grow, right? We want to go into we're shifting now and looking at in some other spaces. How do we take from what we've built as a healthcare consultancy and now start to look at how can we go into the PBM space, or pharmacy benefit management space? How can we go into some other things where we can control the product itself, as opposed to being able to go out and actually getting the product from other people? How do we go into, now that there is a concerted effort on minority spend, where a lot of times when we look at that, you're looking at it and you want me to be a manufacturer of product. And so if I'm a manufacturer of product, I can get some other preferential treatment that maybe I can't if I'm just a broker for product. And so we're looking at saying, if we can control pricing, if we can control contractual terms, we can control those things. Those are the things where we don't see us playing in that space, specifically in employee benefit world. That has been something that I have watched a bunch of carrier partner folks leave their respective carriers, go and start some entity, man, and in 5 to 7 years, they selling that deal for $50 million, $100 million, because they took control over the space that they knew that they could control more from a manufacturer. Even if you white label that deal, right? You white label, private label that deal, and you take a product, slap your name on it, you're going out and you're representing that deal. You got the back office to be able to do it. Well, now I can go to somebody and say, hey, we've got our own dental product. We've got our own pharmacy management contracts that we can negotiate, on your behalf. That's different than us being in the space that we're in right now. That takes us to yet the next level that we watched other people have. And then what it does for me also is that it allows the folks on my team to play a part in building that, because even though they've been with me, several of them have been with me when I built this has been my baby. I've been building this. And so I'm looking at what other opportunities can I help to provide for other folks that look like me, that they can come in and get in this space, and hopefully they'll get better. And so I have this new terminology that I'm either not new in a sense that is new, but new that I'm gonna share with you, Rod. And I talk about it from a sports analogy standpoint. And I started looking at that they always talked about Bill Belichick's coaching tree, right? And Tony Dungy's coaching tree. And I said, you know what? I want people to talk about the Kareim Cade tree. What does that look like? Because now that means that I've had an impact. And it's not just what I could carry, but it's the other people that I impacted the lives of. And now they're carrying, and they've got a tree, and this person's got a tree, and this person got a tree. So when people, my legacy right now is that when people come over and they come to say my final goodbyes, and people stand over me, I'm not looking for that to be family members and friends, because they know who I am. They know who I've been to other people. I'm looking for those folks that we went out and made an impact with. That's the folks that I want to come up and eulogize me, to say, hey, this brother helped me connect me with this over here, or he connected me with this. He gave me insight on how to do this. That's what I'm passionate about now. And so my next stint of the journey is just simply looking at how many more people, now that the gate has been open and I've been able to get my foot in, and now I'm through with shoulders in. I may got one more, and maybe one more shoulder that need to come through, but I'm in there enough to be able to hold the gate open and say, you know what, come on. And I think that we have done a disservice, and I'm gonna go on a limb, and maybe everybody doesn't agree with this, but I've been saying I ain't gonna stop. I think that the baby boomers in many cases did a disservice, because they did not come back and reach back and say, here's the deal. They said, look, we pulled ourselves up, pull yourself up, go figure it out. And I just think that it is the challenge in our community that has not allowed us to move faster through the process, because we're telling each person behind us, you go figure it out. Why should I be figuring it out when you already know? So I'm saying, if there is a shortcut, hard work never is going to be undercut. I mean, that's going to always be good. But if there is a shortcut, I'm reminded of what one of my mentors shared with me. And it's simply saying that, Kareim, if you're looking at if you were in a high-speed car, you name whatever car it was, and you're traveling down this highway and you're doing 150 miles per hour, nice sunny day, tops down, you're having a great time. And here it is, as my mentor, he was saying, I'm sitting in this helicopter, so you can see the next quarter mile up. I can see 5 miles down the road of what's going on. And the difference was, you don't see the detour that's ahead. I see the detour that's ahead, and I want to give you that insight. So no, you can come back to me and say, no, coach, everything is going great. I'm telling you, it's 150 miles per hour. The sun is down. My top is down. I got my favorite song. I'm bumping Snoop Dogg, and I'm kicking it. And everything is good. And the mentor is like, look, you know what? No, I'm telling you, the road is out ahead. We need to take a detour. We need to do something different. And so I feel like that is my role now with new people coming in, is that now I've moved from the high-speed car and I moved into the helicopter. And I now want to be the person to be able to say, hey, seen this before. I can't tell you that it's always going to, because I'm the person that's always going to tell you, you know, I don't believe anybody telling me that it can't be done. It's just, it hasn't been done at this point. So it can be done. Yeah. But if there's a way to be able to avoid some of the heartache and pain, by trying it. And if it's something I've tried, I know some people who've tried this. I can tell you at least here's all the things that they tried. Let me give you this so you can take this off the table and you can try to come at it from a different way. But that is a shortcut, because now you wouldn't spend your time going on the 4 methods that we know won't work because they've been tried and proven that it will not work. But you can try number 5, 6, and 7, and 8. I'm not going to ever discourage you from doing that. I'm going to encourage you to do that. And so for me, that is the next level of the game, taking this and being able to share that vision with other marginalized communities that they need to jump into this, man.
Yes, bro. This has been an amazing conversation. I don't listen. First of all, I don't know. We might need a part 2 to this because we didn't even get into like the trade organizations. I wanted to jump into that, and the legislation and all that. You know, man, look. For somebody who is thinking about getting into this business, you know, they're watching it, they listen to what you, I mean, shoot, if they don't want to get into this industry after hearing you talk, maybe it's not for them. I don't know.
Hey, I'm like the old Baptist preacher. I done preach myself happy. You know,
hey, bro, you think you want to go take my test again? You know. But you know, just kind of closing comments. You know, somebody's thinking about getting into the business. Maybe they're still on the fence for whatever reason. I don't know how. Maybe they've had an interview. You know, with a company. You know, maybe they've met somebody. Maybe they tried it in the past.
Right.
Didn't quite work out, and it's still kind of on their mind. What kind of guidance would you give to that individual?
So for the first person that's just thinking about doing it, I say just do it, right? Because if there's nothing can happen bad from you having a license. Matter of fact, it makes you more marketable in any other situation. You might go into healthcare, you might go into anything, and see people see that you have a license there, and that will add to what you bring to the table. And so just go do it, right? Go get the license. If you're thinking about it, go get the license. Now, once you get that license, what I would encourage them to do is to really think about what is it that you're passionate about. And the first thing both people going to tell me is that I just like helping people. Well, that's great. I don't knock that sentiment. That just helping people is typically not enough for people to get out and go get it, right? To go get it the way that they need to go get it. So I'm going to need them to have some other selfish motivation inside. Now, that doesn't mean that, you know, you're not thinking about other people. You are thinking about other people, but I need something else that's going to be a driving factor or force for you while you're looking to help other people. But it's something else that's going to get you up out the bed. It's something else when you hear 100 no's. It's something else when it looked like you needed, you know, the mortgage due and you're trying to figure, you're going to have something else besides helping, because you can get abandoned helping other people real quick when it comes down to self-preservation. You know, so I need them to think about, as a viewer, as a listener, I need you to think about what is the why in you as to why you want to do this deal. Because the how is going to come. The how is going to be training, whatever. You'll figure those pieces out. And so that's it. The person that has been in the business for some time and hasn't had any success, the first thing that I'm going to have them do is go look in the mirror, right? Because you've got to have a true reflection of yourself as to why it hasn't worked. When we look at these folks, you and I have seen people that are majorly successful in this business. And I'm looking at them, they can't put a sentence together, brother. They quiet. It's all of the things, brother. And you looking like they MDRT, they top of the table. And you're like, damn, this joker making more money, but they paying him to come in and speak. This is the worst speaker we ever seen. But that joker making $250,000 a year. He making $500,000 a year. And I'm sitting here comparing myself to him. And damn it, they ain't never asked me to come speak, but they asking him to come speak. And so I just want you to look at yourself in the mirror and figure out, what didn't you do? Because the excuses that we make as to why it happens, and I can tell you the most common excuse is going to be, well, my agency didn't train me. Well, the leader of my team was a jerk. Well, they didn't have the right products. Well, you know what? That part of the industry is shrinking right now. Well, you know what? I saw another commercial where this insurance carrier is going to be better. I can go on and on and on and on. And you just got to be truthful with yourself and say, you know what? If this thing doesn't work, it's on me. It is 100% on me, because the information that I have access to now, whether it be going on to LinkedIn and finding producers and people that are being successful, you can follow them. And what I find is most people in our industry, it becomes this club and this camaraderie where people will share information with you. I just very rarely find people who won't share information with me on what they might be doing. And I'll tell you one other thing my mentor shared with me years ago was that you can share 100% of the information that you know, because 99% of the people never going to do the work anyway. And so I share everything that I know with folks, because you can't get what's mine. I mean, my deal is my deal. So I can share everything with you, what I do, all my little trade secrets. Even if we're competing against each other, you're going to be different. You're going to do you the way you do you. I'm going to do me the way I do me. And you can't be me. I'm one of one, right? You're one of one. And so I would start and looking in the mirror and simply saying, what could I have done differently that would allow me to be successful? And the other thing I would say to that person who's kind of retreading in this business is leave it all on the floor. I was determined in this second go round that I didn't want to think about the insurance business again. I wanted to go in, I wanted to go as hard as I could. And then if it didn't work for me, I was never looking in the rearview mirror, simply talking about, man, maybe I should have stayed in the insurance business. I would have given it everything that I had, bro. And I could take it off my list. There's nothing worse than rolling through life with stuff that's still on your list that you didn't satisfy, and you always looking in the rear view. And I remember reading this somewhere else. The windshield is so much larger than the rear view mirror, man. And most people spend their time in the rear view mirror looking behind, as opposed to all this windshield we got in front of us, brother, with so much more to be thankful for and looking forward and looking outward to. And I just say that person, you need to reevaluate. You need to reevaluate what it is, and you need to lock in on something specific that you're going to do. And you can't keep hopping, because normally if you tell me somebody who's unsuccessful in this business, they've hopped from agency, from carrier to, you know what I mean? They just hop because it's the next best idea. Somebody came and told them that they was making, $10,000 a week. They got all excited and they did a deal. And I'm not saying that person not making $10,000 a week, but the better question is you should be asking them is, what did they do and how long did it take them to get to $10,000 a week? And most people don't ask those questions. And so when they talk to me now, I'm like, it's 24 years, man. So you talking about, oh man, I ain't got it like you on vacation for a week. Well, 24 years, man. I think I should be able to take a vacation for a week and not ask anybody after 24 years. And if I can't do that, then shame on me. So that would be my other piece. And then the third thing that I would say to all of that is that you got to work on you. And the thing that I tell people when they start out in this business, it's simply this, Rod. You got to treat it like a job. The first 3 years, you got to treat it like a job. What do I mean by that? I mean, block schedule. If I was coaching somebody, I would tell me what you do between 8 and 9. Tell me what you do between 9 and 10. Tell me what you do. Because most people are going to tell me that they work 80 hours in the business that week. But if I go back and look through every block and hour that they have, what most people think is that they get into this business and they think they're in business for themselves, that means that they can go grocery shopping in the morning, they can go pick up their cleaner during the day. That means that they can go over to the kids' school and read books. And I'm not saying all that stuff is important, but I'm saying if you worked a 9-to-5 job, you wouldn't be doing that. So you cannot do that this way. And if you're thinking that your value is more than an employer is paying you, then you got to work for yourself the same way that you was working for them jokers when they was paying you $50,000, $60,000 a year or whatever your number was. And most people refuse to do that. When I look at that, that's what I did on the front end. And that was it. It was critical for me to know every different deal, because I felt like, listen to what I said, right? I felt like I was working. But when I really got down to it and I asked myself the tough questions of how much I had done towards that, I really wasn't working, man. I was shuffling papers around, sitting at your desk, answering emails, on LinkedIn, all that stuff. There's a place for all that, but none of that at the time that you're doing it is creating revenue. And so you got to look at those revenue producing time frames and making sure that in any one of those slots that you got that, what is your follow-up? What is your process and methodology for going through a week? In the first 3 years, you got to disappear. Tell everybody you'll see them in 3 years. I mean, that doesn't mean you missing major family functions, no type, but you also got to get the other thing I would share with people. If they are married and if they have kids, you've got to sit those folks down and let them get on the same page with you as to what it is that you're looking to accomplish, and that this is something that we are doing together, even though I may be the person out there, because you can't have that static coming home and listening to somebody kick you in the ass when you've been out there getting kicked in the ass the entire time during the week. You need to have that to be a safe zone to come in, to be restored, to be able to get back up out there. And I need somebody who's going to get behind me and say, get back up off the mat on the times when I don't want to. And so those are the things that I think that people don't look at when they build a business. You got to be ready for all the jokes. When you're going to get a real job, you still doing that insurance thing? Oh my God, I ain't never think you was gonna make it in that. So all that stuff, but now nobody's laughing at me anymore. Now I'm the smartest guy in the room. But in the beginning, I had to take all of the hits, man. When you gonna finally get a real job? Ain't you tired of doing this deal? How do you even deal with it? You don't know what you're gonna get paid and how you get paid. And now my response is, how do you deal with knowing that your check gonna be the same every 2 weeks? How do you deal with that? Like, I don't understand how you know your check is gonna be the same if you work 80 hours or if you work 60 hours. They gonna pay you the same money because you salary. How do you deal with that? I don't understand, because if I work more hours, I get paid more money for doing that deal. But in your situation, that ain't the case. And so signing off to simply say those would be the things that I would encourage somebody new with. I call years. The first 3 years are the apprenticeship years. You're going to bump your head. It's going to be a tough deal. You may have to go get a nighttime job or something to supplement your income. Why? Let me go back and say it again. You might have to go do something you don't want to do to supplement you while you're doing it. But I promise you this, if you stay the course and you can actually look at what you're doing on a day-to-day basis, you won't have that ancillary income that you have to depend on. This will become your main thing. This is all I do. I don't do this sometimes, Rod. I don't do this every now and then. I have done only this for years. This is all. I mean, there has been no secondary, no outside, anything I made, I created it from what already exists right here.
See, all that red in the background, it's not for Clark Atlanta. It's not for the Kansas City Chiefs. It's for the fire.
Yeah.
It's for the fire.
For the fire, baby. I love it.
Bro, tell the people, if they want to reach out to you, if they want to find out more about Great Lakes Benefits Group, if they want to reach out to Kareim Cade, how can they reach out and get some more of this wisdom?
Oh, man. Well, one, they can go to our website, which is www.greatlakes with an S, benefit singular group.com. So www.greatlakesbenefitgroup.com. I'm also on LinkedIn, Kareim Cade, Kareim Cade. Reach out to me on LinkedIn. Love to have some conversation with you. And email address is my first name, for first initial last name. So kcade@greatlakesbenefitgroup.com. Feel free to reach out to me direct. If I can be of any help, I will. Also do is make sure that I can steer you on. And I'm going to tell you, just like what happened with Bob, I'm just going to be upfront. I'm busy. If you don't get me the first time, don't say, oh, well, here this joker is. He talked all that stuff and now he won't talk to me. No, there's a lot of time. I do this all the time. I do these kind of podcasts all the time. I do other things. So I'm always putting information out. So if I don't get right back to you, don't hold that against me. Reach out again. The squeaky wheel gets the oil, right? Reach out again, and that's going to make you even stronger as you go into this sales thing. Because if you can't take rejection for somebody you're just trying to reach out to, hell, you definitely can't make it doing this. So reach out. Let's talk. Reach out through Rod. Let's connect. And if I can be of any help at all, that is indeed the mission at this point, man.
Hey, look, thank you once again. So appreciative, of the time, of the words, of the knowledge. This conversation, this is going to change some lives, man.
Hey, man, well, I hope so. I think with what you're doing, again, shout out to you for what you're doing and taking it from this approach and really getting it in front of folks that don't hear this. I mean, as we talk about this, nobody tells you when you grow up that you should be in the insurance business. However, when you and I look at what our monthly expenses look like, I can tell you, anybody show me their monthly expenses, I'm gonna tell them that 40% of that is going to some form of insurance, whether it's car insurance, homeowners insurance, renters insurance, boat insurance, brother, phone insurance, brother, dental insurance, health insurance, brother. Shall I go on, brother? Warranties on their TV, warrant insurance for their phone. I mean, brother, they are paying insurance notes. And the other side to that is every time you pay that every month, somebody like me, somebody like Rod is getting paid.
That's right. That's right. Hey, look, if you've listened today, I have no doubt. Normally I say maybe you heard something, but if you're listening today, I have no doubt that you heard a word that has you thinking to yourself right now, you should get a license. Until the next time, have a great one.